Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel for another property video. On this channel, I aim to educate people about all types of property related matters relevant to the UK. So if you want to learn about property and have an interest in property, then click subscribe to keep up to date with my new videos. In today's video, I'll be going through the shared ownership scheme in England. I'll talk about eligibility, how it works, including some figures, and I'll go through some advantages and disadvantages of the scheme. Without further ado, let's dive straight into it. What is shared ownership? In a nutshell, the shared ownership scheme helps people become property owners by offering a part ownership, part rent setup. In other words, you can buy a share in a property, and then on the share you don't own, you pay rent to a housing association. To be eligible, you need to fit some criteria, which include the following. Your household earns less than £80,000 a year if outside of London, or less than £90,000 a year if you're inside London. You need to be able to prove you can afford the monthly costs, of which the main ones are your mortgage, the rent, and the service charge. And you fall into one of these three categories. A, you're a first-time buyer. B, you've had a home in the past, sold it, but now can't afford to buy a 100% share in a property. Or C, you're an existing shared owner looking to move home. The shared ownership scheme can be available not only on new build properties, but also existing properties through a resale program, which are usually run by housing associations such as Catalyst or Notting Hill Genesis. So if you are looking, you might come across a conversion flat in a Victorian building that's for sale under the shared ownership scheme. Now here's how it works. You are able to buy a share of between 25 and 75% of a home's market value. Let's say, for example, you find a nice 2-bedroom flat for £400,000 and a housing association is offering you a 25% share in it. You can buy that share for £100,000 and then the housing association are going to own the other 75%. You'll still need a deposit, which is usually around 5 to 10%, but that's on the share value. So in this case, 5 to 10% of £100,000 is about £5 to £10,000. This deposit amount depends on your mortgage lender, so be sure to speak with the mortgage advisor first. You also need to pay rent on the 75% share that you don't own. This is normally around 2.75 to 3% of the unsold equity per year. If we take 3% of the £300,000, which is the 75% share you don't own, this equates to £9,000 a year. Divide that number by 12 and that will get you your monthly rent, which in this case is £750. Once you own your 25% share and have lived in the property for a certain period of time, you can purchase additional shares. This process is known as staircasing. You can staircase until you eventually own 100% of the property. In very rare cases, the lease will cap your ownership at 80%, so always check this with a solicitor if you are thinking of buying or if you're currently in the process of buying. The more shares you own, the smaller rent you pay to the housing association. One point here to make is that every time you buy extra shares, it's based on the current market value at the time. So if property prices have gone up, you'll pay more for an equivalent share than before. You can normally staircase a minimum of 10% at a time, but this depends on the housing association. Some housing associations will limit the number of times you can actually staircase, which is normally up to about 3 times. So if you own a 25% share and you want to get to 100, you'll need to buy a 25% share each time, which could be quite costly. There are proposed changes to the shared ownership scheme, which will look at reducing the minimum share amount you start off with and how much you can staircase each time. But I'll probably do an updated video in 2021 once it's all kind of set in stone. If you do want to buy more shares, there will be professional costs involved because the process of buying more shares involves a chartered surveyor, a solicitor, and potentially a mortgage advisor. Firstly, you will need a chartered surveyor to value the property and prepare a report stating the current market value. This report is sent to you, but is normally addressed to the housing association. You'll then have 3 months from the date of that report to complete the process. Otherwise, the report expires and you'll need to pay for a new one. Next, you'll need a solicitor to do all the legal paperwork, update the lease and your title register to show your new ownership amount. This is very similar to a normal property transaction. If you're buying more shares with cash that you saved up, then you won't need a mortgage advisor. However, if you're looking to release equity that you've built up to buy more shares, then you'll probably need to speak to a mortgage advisor for that. That kind of sums up how the shared ownership scheme works. So now I'll go through some advantages and disadvantages. You can get on the property ladder even if your salary or deposit isn't that high. Rent payments are usually lower than renting privately. You can choose how you pay the stamp duty. You have an option of either paying one lump sum based on 100% value straight away, or you can pay in stages as you staircase. You can sell your shares at any time, but if you're planning to sell, the housing association gets 6 to 8 weeks to market the property before you can take it to open market. There's more security from this type of setup than just renting privately.
Disadvantages.
Whilst only owning a share of the property, you're still obligated to pay 100% of the service charge and ground rent. Staircasing each time carries professional costs, which can add up over the years. The smaller share you own, the less you'll benefit from any property price increases. Shared ownership properties are always leasehold, even houses. If you buy a shared ownership house and staircase to 100%, you may be able to buy the freehold off them. And that concludes the shared ownership scheme in a nutshell. I hope this has been useful and that you've learned something new today. If you like the video, share the love and hit that like button, and definitely share with your friends because this could be an option for them to get onto the property ladder. Follow me on Instagram if you haven't already at rw__property, where I put out other little nuggets of information there for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at my next video.